On today's Locked On NBA Game Night podcast, the schedule was released. Did the NBA get the marquee dates right? Was anybody snubbed with a tough schedule? Plus, the matchups we cannot wait for in this NBA season.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
Let's get it going on the Locked On NBA Game Night podcast on Locked On Podcast Network. Your teams every day. I'm Rylan Stiles, host of Locked On Thunder. That's David Ramil, host of Locked On Heat. We're with you every single Thursday, usually covering all the NBA games, but in the offseason, we're talking about everything under the sun. But today, we are adjacently talking games because the NBA schedule was announced today. This afternoon, we got the full picture of all teams playing their 80 games. We'll find out the last two as the NBA Cup unfolds. But we do have the majority of the games, obviously, David. It's a fun day. It's not like other leagues, like the NFL, for example, where they release the schedule and you go through and go win, loss, win, loss. I am a little jealous of leagues like that where you can do that kind of content, but there's no way to go win-loss through 82 games. So we'll just talk about the biggest matchups we cannot wait to see. We'll talk about if any team has a difficult schedule with all the back-to-backs and everything else. So, David, let's start with the opening night games. We predicted them last week. Do you think that the NBA got it right? Opening night will include the Knicks taking on the Sixers and the Thunder taking on the Spurs, but it will also feature the Celtics and the Pistons.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue against those three games, to be honest with you. The marquee matchup, I think, again, the 76ers, a very loaded team. Obviously, I'm pretty bullish on their chances this upcoming season. But to take on the best team in the Eastern Conference, the New York Knicks, I think is absolutely a great matchup between two really strong contenders out in the Eastern Conference. And the other matchups, again, I mean, a good rivalry in Oklahoma City and San Antonio. Obviously want to watch that. And then, to see other big teams lining up on opening night, I think they did it right. I can't argue against what they were able to, put together, because I think it's a good cross-section of different narratives, but really compelling teams, strong contending teams, or in the case of the New York Knicks, a team that just came off a championship run too. So I can't argue with it. I think they did it. I think they nailed it, to be honest with you. How about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm all in on this schedule, and I'm also all in on the Celtics and Pistons game being in the afternoon. It was reported that it is, because of the European audience of putting a game out there that they can more so enjoy. But I'm curious if this is a sort of test run for what the NBA might dive into more afternoon games. And I know that sounds crazy to a lot of us, but there is a sport here in America that does that. Baseball has routine afternoon games throughout a given week, throughout the regular season. They also routinely, of course, have opening day, which most of those games happen during the day. And I think a full day of NBA basketball is going to be fun to usher in this new year. But what is your take on the idea that perhaps maybe, and this is just speculation, but maybe the NBA in the future will play more games in the afternoon? Because we saw some of this in the bubble and people really liked it, but that was a different circumstances. More people working from home, more people inside their home. In a more routine life, do you think that afternoon basketball in the weekday could actually work?
It's hard for me to separate because, as a person who covers the NBA, I'll make the time. And, we see what the Christmas Day lineup is like. Pretty much you're opening up presents in the morning if you're lucky enough to do so, or if you celebrate, and then it's a full day of basketball. So you're watching the whole day. You're parked in the front of the couch. You get your order of food, or you have leftovers, or whatever meals are planned for the day. You're just basically eating and watching basketball all day. Can't go wrong with that. So I love that combination of games, and I love the spread out schedule in that sense. But even just trickling a few games here and there in the afternoon, I think just gives it a different dynamic. And to separate myself as much as I can, if you're a true NBA fan especially in those respective fan bases that are playing those afternoon games, you'll make the time. You'll find a way to do so, whether it means going to the actual game if it's being played locally, or going to your local pub or bar or whatever sports place and watching those games, or even just watching it from home, or even trying to catch a few clicks here and there, maybe on some some streaming apps while you're at work. I'm sure maybe your bosses wouldn't appreciate that necessarily, but you'll try to find a way to watch these games and you keep up on the score. So I'm all for it. I can't see a downside to it. I don't think you're necessarily losing a big part of an audience or anything like that, because for your more hardcore fans that are going to try to watch those games, watching them on TV, whether it's at 3 o'clock or 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, you're going to make the time. And look, we do this all the time. Even when, I'm in Miami, obviously, when there's West Coast games that start at 10:30 p.m. and don't end till way past 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm watching them regardless. So I think that if you're a true fan, you'll find a way to watch these games no matter what. So I love it. I'm all for it.
Yeah, and I'm with you, and I think that it is hard. You make a great point of trying to speak on this in a unique situation, because we're lucky enough to cover this league, and it's because of everyone listening. But we're lucky enough to where like this is our gig, so of course we can be available to watch NBA games, and other people don't have that luxury. But it's a great point about the late night games, because again, we are lucky enough to be able to stay up and watch those games. But even throughout the normal course of an NBA season, it is hard for local fans, if you're not based in the West Coast, to stay up for those West Coast games anyway. So that's a segment of games of your favorite team that already come on in unideal time slots. And so throughout 82 games of product that the NBA has, being able to put some of them in the afternoon, I think would be a good idea, because you have the hardcore base that you're talking about. You have the European audience that the NBA is citing for this opening game. And you have a lot of, Luka, Jokic, you have a lot of guys that like would be marketable in afternoon games to get that TV audience. And then you also have the ability to have people listen to on the radio, or to have a second screen on at work. I mean, I think that, if you do have an office job, like I would imagine it's pretty common that you have music going during your day, or you have something stimulating besides your work. And this could just be another option for you. And so I think that from all these places, right, that you have the ability to draw from in the afternoon, the amount of viewership that you would get for a 7 p.m. game versus for a 3:30 p.m. game, even on a weekday, I think would be offset because of the hardcore fans, because of the European fans, and just be a different look, especially to break up sort of the 82 game schedule. I know that, if you were looking at it from that standpoint of, would you rather have your Miami Heat Golden State Warriors game tip off for you at 10 p.m. or would you rather have it tip off at about 4 o'clock? I think that everyone knows where they would land in Miami. And I think that it would be interesting there, because even for the players, once football season ends, they do play an afternoon showcase on Sundays. And like that is obviously a one-off thing, and it's usually reserved for great teams. So like not every player in the league has to be accustomed to that, but it is certainly doable. And I think it's very interesting to see the league explore that. And then we did also have the second biggest day of the year, or arguably the first biggest day of the year, the Christmas Day schedule come out for the NBA. Finals rematch, Spurs, Knicks, and then you have your Heat and the Celtics going at it, the Sixers and the Lakers with LeBron going back to LA, the Thunder and Timberwolves, and then we mentioned last week, you've got to find a way to get Steph and Jokic on there and these big stars, but even though these teams don't have the same appeal that some of the top echelon teams do in the NBA, and they just decide to throw them together in the night of Jokic versus Steph. So what Christmas Day game, besides Miami for you and besides OKC for me, are you most anticipating?
Yeah, it's hard to overlook Spurs Knicks, right? That rematch on New York Day, kind of kicking off everything. What a way to start off an exciting day of basketball, where you watch these two great teams and you just hope that neither team is plagued by injury or affected by any kind of undue injury at that point in time, because I think that's as good a start as you're going to find. Obviously, the rest of the slate is really good, but give me the Sixers and Lakers. I love the narrative of LeBron going back to the Lakers, Luka taking on his former teammate. There's so much to like about these, a stock team, a well-stacked team in Philadelphia, and then a team like the Lakers that's obviously a global popularity. You can't go wrong with that. So all these games are really, really exciting. Even the Nuggets and Warriors, the two teams that are kind of fairly well-established, not any kind of significant amount of change this past offseason, but they're going to be competitive. They're going to be exciting to watch. Again, I think they did it perfectly. I don't know if anybody necessarily got snubbed from Christmas Day. But I look at that schedule and I think those are 10 teams that deserve to be there because they've got the superstar talent, because they've got great storylines attached to them. It's a really exciting day of basketball for sure.
Yeah, and I think that they got the teams right. I don't think there's a team out there that is genuinely snubbed from not being on this showcase date. I'm glad that you gave the Sixers and the Lakers the nod, because I was going to as well. I mean, if you take out the teams that we cover of Miami and OKC, Luka is like my favorite player to watch play basketball. And so seeing these new look Lakers taking on these new look Sixers is fun. But since you took that game, I will take the low hanging fruit of watching New York and San Antonio battle it out again. Not only a finals rematch, an NBA Cup rematch, and also they played on Christmas Day a couple years ago against one another in New York, so running that back as well. But coming up, there were some teams snubbed. Who didn't get enough national TV love? What matchups are we jonesing for that only play a limited amount of times this season? All coming up on today's Locked On NBA Game Night podcast. But first, I want to tell you right now, my good friends over at Odoo, go check out Odoo today, because running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focused on growing the business instead of managing software. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent, it's about having everyone work toward the same goal. That's true in sports, just like it is in business. Go check them out today, because one thing that I think really stands out from every organization that you see succeeding is the fact that they're all pulling in the same direction. They're on the same page when it comes to decision making. And you want to have that spread out across your business, across your organization, to make yourself successful. And that's what Odoo can do for you. Great organizations win because operations matter. And that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. Odoo.com/lockedon. We're back on the Locked On NBA Game Night podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I'm Rylan Stiles. That's David Ramil. I cover the Thunder. He covers the Heat, and we cover the NBA on Thursday nights here on Locked On NBA Game Night. So, David, whenever you look at the rest of this schedule release, I think that everyone always rushes to who's gotten the national TV love. And we've seen the national TV results be posted, obviously, of what amounts to the most amount of national TV games that any team is allowed to have is 34. And the Knicks, the Spurs, the Sixers, and the Lakers all have 34 national TV dates. The Thunder are in second place with 30, and they're the only team that cracked that 30 threshold. Do you think that they got it right with who they're showing the most attention to? And is there any team that you think should be on national TV more this season?
I guess you could make the strongest argument against the Lakers, but that feels kind of pointless at this time. It's just, this is the Lakers. They are globally popular. Like I said earlier, they do have Luka Doncic. That's international appeal there. So there's a lot of reasons why the Lakers are on TV as often as they are, even if they're not necessarily looked at as one of the top contending teams in the upcoming season. But as far as the second question there, who got the snub, maybe, honestly, it's surprising to me, but the Washington Wizards, with only 6 national televised games. You've got the top pick of the draft, and Dybantsai. You got Trae Young, who's an all-star popular player. Again, Anthony Davis, assuming he stays with his team, which it looks like he is. That could be a team that could win a surprising amount of games. Like, I know maybe it's based on their regular season last year or what their projections might be for this upcoming season, but I think it's interesting to promote a player like a Victor Wembanyama, a guy who has this kind of generational type talent, but you can't overlook, your year-to-year kind of number one pick like Dybantsai. I think it's unfair to just kind of, put a player like that to the side and not promote that next generation of players. And you can make that argument for the Utah Jazz. I think they've got one more nationally televised game. The Memphis Grizzlies with Cam Boozer. Like, you want to be able to promote these young players because this is the next generation of superstars and the works. And so I think giving them an opportunity to get a little bit more national exposure would certainly go a long way towards building that brand down the road.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the Lakers would be the one that got the max amount of games. That is talent wise, just like, oh, that's interesting. But they have Luka and they're the Lakers, so they're always going to have the maximum amount of games possible. So Steph Curry has 28, with Denver having 28 as well, in that kind of next tier of teams. And then I do believe that your picks are good. They should be showcasing AJ and DP more than 6 times each on national television, because we've talked about the Wizards being a team that could be spunky with Trae Young and AD, and a team that could make a run in the Eastern Conference play-in and be in that postseason type of range. I'll go with someone in the middle of the pack. At 15 comes the Indiana Pacers with 11. I think that they're
Nice.
going to have that be a mistake of the Eastern Conference. There's just so many matchups that are fun, where you talk about your Heat, you talk about the 76ers and the Knicks and the Raptors, if this Kawhi trade holds up. There's just so many fun teams in the East. And Indiana, with their health this season, if they're healthy, they're going to bounce back in such a big way. Halliburton's one of the most fun players to watch in the NBA, and to see them below teams like Dallas, who has Cooper Flag, it's to see them below Dallas in this instance is just, and 6 games off of the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think that the flex opportunities that will come later in the season, I think that you're going to see the Pacers flexed into some big games.
Yeah, I'd love that. I think, part of the problem is that you wind up overexposing maybe your top teams, or even those teams that have like a superstar like the Los Angeles Lakers that might not be a true contender at the start of the season. And so while you want to put them out as often as you possibly can, and I understand that business model, I think it's important for the league to do a better job of building up the middle and showcasing some of those teams. Like, why don't we get to see those teams that might be much better than anticipated, or could have some juice, like Indiana? I mean, I think they're a legitimate contender with Halliburton there and with Zubac in the middle. And I mean, that's an exciting group that just came off a finals run, and they still got Pascal Siakam as an all-star there with international appeal. Like, there's a lot to like about that Pacers team. But I mean, the Hawks were exciting last year. They're better this season. They've made some smart trades too. You got to do a better job of showcasing these teams in the middle, because otherwise, for us sickos that will be watching as much basketball as possible, there's only so much Lakers basketball that I could personally handle on national television. I'd rather watch some of the other teams, even the lower rung teams. Pick your New York Pelicans or any other team that might not, the Brooklyn Nets. Like, why not showcase them a little bit more? Because every team deserves that kind of exposure, even if they're predictably bad. I get it, but put them out there a little bit more often, a little bit less Lakers, a little bit more Nets. I think makes everybody happier.
Yeah, and I think that is spot on, especially like early in the year when you're battling football, and it's like your national TV ratings are gonna dip anyway battling football. Why not use that as a time to promote some of these younger teams who, for the start of the year, will be going hard, will be playing all their guys, and we'll get them some exposure. And if casual sports fans view that and say, oh, it's the Nets on national TV, and they might not click into it. Well, there's probably a football game on that they were going to click into anyway, even if you put your biggest stars on that stage. So it would have been a good opportunity to kind of spread that wealth around, and then you can protect yourself, like you're mentioning, like the lack of attention for certain teams makes some quote unquote surprise deep runs into the season even more dramatically surprising to casual fans, because they weren't the teams that were shoved down their throat the entire season. But in the playoffs, they were awesome. Whereas like diehard NBA fans kind of look down their nose at those casual fans saying like, how did you not know that the Pacers were good? And they've been the best team since January 1st. It's like, well, is that the casual fans' fault that they didn't know? Because they're admittedly casual fans, and the NBA didn't showcase this Pacers team enough that year that they went on that run to the finals in 25. So I think that's a good point as well about spreading the wealth around, even if that like some of these teams are not as good as others, especially in this era where you have this new media rights deal. There's practically a national TV game in some capacity because they're counting Peacock and Amazon as national TV games. There's practically a national TV game every single day of the week whenever you get to this point for the NBA. So we're coming up. Let's say how we were snubbed as fans. I have a couple for you, plus matchups that we're excited to watch. We're back on the Locked On NBA Game Night podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I'm Rylan Stiles. That's David Ramil. He's the host of Locked On Heat. I'm the host of Locked On Thunder, and we're taking you through the NBA. So we've talked about national TV snubs. We addressed that we don't think that there's any Christmas Day snubs. One area where I think, and this is just unbiasedly as an NBA fan, that I think that the NBA, it was sad that this was the turn for OKC and San Antonio, only playing 3 times this season. I want as many of those matchups as possible because it's such great basketball. They played last season 4 times, plus in the NBA Cup for a 5th time, and then, of course, went on to that 7-game series. But with this matchup this season, barring how the NBA Cup shakes out, they'll only play 3 times this year.
Yeah, disappointing, right? I mean, each one of those games, to my recollection, had certainly a lot of star power, a lot of big name action. You know, the Thunder coming off of their title run the previous season, the Spurs, up and coming team that went on to do great things in the postseason. And you think, you know, they should get continued coverage, you know, continue to promote those players. So it's a kind of, I understand you can't do everything perfectly. I know it's difficult to crunch all these games and make it work as well as some of us might like, but they should have done a better job. Like, you know, the Thunder, a team that I think gets underrepresented on national television enough as it is, despite their success in recent seasons. And so you want to do as much as you can to promote them. And if you're going to put them up against a top rival in San Antonio that does maybe have a little bit more international appeal with Victor Wembanyama on that roster, yeah, you should try to find a way to get an extra matchup between the two teams. It's the least you could do.
It is, and I think that the only other snub on here for the schedule, and then I want to get into some exciting games because I think that there are plenty, is that the NBA has been trying to make this rivalry week something that sticks, something with staying power, and it kind of make it a appointment for NBA fans as it comes in the end of January, as the NFL season is coming to a close, and they're really shifting gears into basketball. And yet this is another year where they've kind of dropped the ball a little bit in some instances. Last year, the Thunder took on the Bucks on rivalry week. They have no history together. The only history is that they played the Cup championship the year before against one another. This year, there's points of that too, where it's like the Hornets and Timberwolves. It's like, okay, like I get that you want to showcase that game because Leo LaMelo and the tie to Charlotte, but it goes back to our national TV conversation. Is the only way to get Charlotte on national TV a gimmick of like this is somehow a rivalry? Like, make rivalry week legitimate rivals, and then put the Charlotte Hornets in Minnesota still on national TV. Just do it throughout the course of the season. And I know that there's so many algorithms, and it's so difficult to put a schedule together. But there's just so many of these rivalries that just don't feel like legitimate rivalries. Like, there are some that they got right, to their credit. Denver and Minnesota. That is a perfect rivalry week game. After that playoff round last year in the first round, and after the shots that were fired from Minnesota, how bad everybody is defending, and like you just imagine that'll be a game that gets the engines firing. At OKC, Denver is a good rivalry, but between Shea and Jokic and the MVPs and the 7-game series that they had 2 years ago. But there's also the look at, you know, Hornets and Minnesota that kind of fall flat a little bit in terms of being rivals, that I think that they should really do a better job of shuffling those around. But that's kind of my only gripe with the NBA schedule, is that they should, if you want to do rivalry week, lean into the biggest ones that you have in the NBA. Have Tatum and Brown play, have OKC play San Antonio, have these rivalries, have Bam play Tyler Hero, like have these rivalries.
Yeah, it's a good point. But honestly, I just wish they'd do away with the whole marketing of rivalry week to begin with. It doesn't seem like it behooves a franchise or a league like the NBA. Like, if you're going to do that with football, where you play far less games, yeah, that's great. If you have something, you know, geographic baked into college football the way that you do, yeah, it makes sense to have rivalry week that way. But to manufacture these feels disingenuous. It just doesn't feel organic or real, as you said, and to kind of market it as a rivalry when none of these are actual rivalries. There's so few, I think, with the way player movement has worked. I don't know how many true rivalries feel like rivalries anymore. Like, I'm looking at this Heat roster just as a person who covers this team and as a person who's watched this team and this league for a long time. They don't have a legitimate rival. We started talking about this on Locked On Heat. Like, What are you going to try and make a rivalry out of Indiana with Miami just because of whatever happened during the Big Three era, taking on those Pacers teams led by Paul George, or because this Pacers team had some gripe with Giannis Antetokounmpo and vice versa? That doesn't really feel like a rivalry. So I don't know that there are a lot of teams that I think fit into that same category as, do they really have a rival? And if they don't, then what's the point of making a rivalry week unless you're just trying to make a big deal out about certain matchups that you are already promoting on Christmas and opening night and on Martin Luther King Day, et cetera. You've already got enough special days to kind of highlight these teams or these rivalries or these narratives, whatever you want to call it. And so to try and manufacture another one just feels wrong to me. I just wish they'd do away with it altogether.
And then the matchups that we're excited to see, and feel free to pick the Heat game on this one, because it's not about the Heat in this instance. I'm asking this question for a different reason. Which return game are you most exciting for? Giannis going to Milwaukee or Jaylen Brown going to Boston? Because I think that this will tell a lot about what each individual, whatever your answer is, I think that this will tell a lot about what you prioritize when watching sports.
Yeah, I think it's the Heat games, just because there's a little bit more bad blood now, I suppose. Again, not really a rivalry, but between what happened with Tyler and Bam, as you alluded to earlier, that feels right. For Giannis, it's definitely got to be an emotional moment, even though he's, and everything he's told reporters since joining the team, he's done a very good job of compartmentalizing those 13 years. He doesn't want to touch that. That's a legacy that will be unassailable for him moving forward. And that's why he's taking on a New Jersey number, et cetera, with the Miami Heat. But still, there's something extra to that. Jaylen Brown didn't leave Boston because he had bad blood necessarily with anybody on that Celtics roster. As much as we would have liked to have, made a big deal about the conflict between him and Tatum, I don't think that was really as contentious as anybody would like it to believe. It was just the front office saying, you know what, we can't really afford to pay you, so we're going to try and find somebody else to take on your salary. Other than that, there's no rivalry there. LeBron James versus Boston, he's played every team in the league 150,000 times at this point in his career. There's no rivalry there. He's got a rivalry with Father Time above anything else. I just don't see a true rivalry there. So it's a great matchup nonetheless, but not a true kind of return rivalry or anything like that has any kind of extra juice to it, as opposed to Bucks Heat, which I think has an extra little spiciness to it this year.
And I think that that's why the Heat and Bucks is the right answer, because it gets a little bit of everything for everybody. If you just love the drama, like the drama of Bam and Tyler Hero matching up is fun. And then if you just love the sentimental stuff and the heartwarming stuff, without a shadow of a doubt what the reception is going to be like in Milwaukee, because to your point, Giannis has said all the right things to appease everybody, to appease Milwaukee fans, and also to appease Heat fans of like, no, I'm all in on the Heat now, and I've kind of moved on from that, and I got to get ready for my next phase. So like Heat fans don't feel like he still is madly in love with Milwaukee, but Milwaukee fans don't feel like he's dissed them at all whatsoever, and so like they're gonna wrap their arms around Giannis. With Jaylen Brown to Boston, everyone's going to put that under the microscope to the point that Jaylen Brown, whether it be streaming or the press conferences, I could see him saying something that irrational and mean and just kind of harsh fan base in Boston might not like by the time we get to January 21st. And like the reception might be a bit more awkward. And I think that to your point, it's like maybe it is all overblown of Brown's feelings of the Celtics and Tatum. But I do think that it'll just be awkward of this is a fan base that is only rivaled by Jaylen Brown's a new fan base of Philadelphia that threw batteries at Santa Claus, that like is not afraid to boo people and be obnoxious. So like, is it going to be split? Are some people going to want to wrap their arms around Jaylen and other people want to boo him? Whereas with the Giannis pick, that you're in for a treat. There's gonna be a video. They're gonna love on him. It's gonna be awesome to kind of see him return to that place. That he'll be emotional because he's such a profound guy of being willing to let you in of like, that this place does mean everything to me. And it is kind of bittersweet to come back here and this time be in the road locker room. But of the returning games, Giannis goes back to Milwaukee on January 28th. Jaylen Brown goes back to Boston on January 21st. Ja Morant goes back to Memphis on February 6th. And I'm just curious what the sentiment is for that game. Of the diest of hard Memphis fans still love Ja Morant. It was messy at the end, though. Like, does that cloud things? Does it cloud things of how messy it got toward the end? And then what I expect, and you expect, so you shouted them out on the national TV games. I expect this young core in Memphis. I'm not going to say they're going to be a postseason team or win a lot of games. They're going to be fun, though. Like, it's going to be fun to support that team if you're in Memphis every single night because of how many interesting young players that they have. Has that fan base moved on from Ja Morant, or are they still going to kind of embrace him to a degree on February 6th? The reception for Ja, I think, will be interesting to monitor. Of just, it can be a point in time where people like you and I, who don't cover the Grizzlies, who aren't a part of that fan base, who aren't a part of that culture in Memphis, like, we might be stunned by the reaction, positively or negatively, of like, oh wow, this is something that's telling of what true fans feel for this guy that I think that a lot of us have had a hard time placing of like what the reception should be for him.
Yeah, I think he'll be generally welcomed back, though. Like, again, it didn't. He made some bad choices, and through it all, I think, as you said, the dice of heart, when Grizzly fans probably still supported him and wanted him on their team. It just was an opportunity for the Grizz to move in a different direction there. But I think that fan base still liked what Morant was capable of and what he brought to the table during his time there when he was at his healthiest and played the way that he did, and where he was one of the top 10 players in the league. So I would expect a warm welcome. Even as you were talking about it, though, like, which player is more likely to get booed of all these different returns? It's not going to be LaMelo. He's not getting booed in Charlotte. I don't think Brown gets booed in Boston. The only one, really, I think Tyler gets booed in Miami, just because of all the things that he said and the fight with Bam and everything else. So other than that, I'm trying to think of it. Maybe would Kawhi get booed with the Clippers if he returns to LA? I mean, it's not quite his return to San Antonio and everything that that happened to force that particular trade, but I just don't see much of a warm welcome for him when he comes back to the Clippers.
And that's a great point that you make, because reading, our guy Locked On Clippers, reading all the Clippers locally, like they are like in support of Kawhi and like kind of shielding him from anything that happened here with this Pablo Torre investigation. That I don't think that there's any bad blood there. However it may end, that he might still be on the team this upcoming season. Who knows? And you go down this list, and it's like Naz Reid is an icon in Minnesota. It's not his fault that he got traded. They're gonna love that guy. Ja Morant, we still believe that fan base loves him. Trae Young, if anything, will just have some apathy, if not love, from Atlanta. Like, no one's going to boo Trae Young, I don't think, in Atlanta. LeBron to LA on Christmas Day. Does LA have any hard feelings? Like, they were ready to move on to Luka. Jaren Jackson Jr. will be loved by Memphis. So it is Tyler Hero. It's like a guy that I think that, in one way, you can say that some of his criticism is warranted. Like, not really, though. But like the thing that is true is that Miami loves Bam Adebayo above everything else not named Dwayne Wade. So it's like they are going to take Bam's side and everything that happens. And I think that this is just something that they'll feel kind of impassioned by, of like, you know what? Bam's our guy. And if this shows support to Bam, let's do it. Let's boo Tyler Hero. Who cares? And like they'll do it. So if you're looking for some animosity, and I think that it's not a guarantee that there'll be any animosity for any of these guys, but if there was one to pick out of a lineup, I think that you're right. It'd be Tyler Hero, because it's signaling to Bam, like, we got your back, man. Whatever happened in Vegas stays in Vegas. Screw it. It's Tyler Hero. It's boo him. You're our guy, and in full support of that. But what matchup, if you can't pick any Heat matchup and I can't pick any Thunder matchup, so it takes off Thunder-Spurs, what matchup are you most looking forward to watching and most looking forward to discussing on this show once we get back to properly being game night and recapping games?
Well, one more point on who you could boo. All 30 teams and all 30 fan bases should just boo the second apron, because I think that's pretty obvious. That's affected everybody. So boo that. Bring out your signs. Boo your second apron. Boo the CBA, etc. As far as particular matchups, man, that's a good one. I do want to see, and we've talked about it for a long time, and I feel like it's going to get a little bit just exhausting, but I really just want to see what the two teams in the East, as far as the Knicks versus the Sixers, looks like. Because on one hand, you've got the Knicks, their exciting, magical run and everything that they went through to get to the finals. And then this other team that's kind of hastily put together, incorporating Brown, incorporating LeBron, the health of Joel Embiid. That's a really interesting matchup to me that I'm looking forward to the most. So to see those two teams, one kind of built on the consistency that they've established over the last few years, and then this Sixers team that's kind of been put together the last couple seasons, and adding these players during this particular offseason. I just want to see what those teams look like going up against each other, and to see a true, if not a rivalry, just a real intense competitive spirit in those matchups.
I will say for mine, and I don't know if this is crazy because it's not like the obvious answers, but I will say Jokic going up against Wemby, of two of the best players that the league has to offer. And if you remember that game down the stretch of last season, it was an afternoon game on Amazon Prime, and they were just going back and forth, and then Jokic hits that sombrero shuffle and wins the game for them in that moment. And at that time, what it felt like was, oh my gosh, we're in store for an amazing West playoffs where like the Thunder, I know covering the Thunder, everybody was praising David Roddy for winning that game on the last game of the year to put the Spurs and Nuggets on the other side of the bracket of like, man, Wemby's got to go through Jokic and then Shea to get to the finals. And Jokic has been so good against Wemby this season. And then, of course, the Nuggets went out without a fight in round one. But that matchup, I think, is still going to be fun to watch. And I cannot wait to watch it again because we thought it was going to be awesome when previewing the playoffs, David.
Absolutely. And that's the whole thing, is that a lot of these stories, even now, it feels premature, even as we're kind of excited for it. It feels also like something tangible. Like, hey, you know what? This is a first stage of appreciating what this upcoming season could bring. But these storylines will change. An injury will take some of the luster off of some of these matchups. Other matchups will kind of start to slowly rev up and get more exciting. But there's so much to look forward to, whether it's a potential, matchup of teams that are maybe surprisingly good, and what that could mean, or maybe an in-season trade kind of changes the dynamic in a certain way. But like, I don't think you have to be an NBA sicko like we are to appreciate what some of these matchups look like. But there's so many good games every night. I think you're going to see a great matchup, and that's what makes it exciting. I think apart from other leagues is that it's smaller than baseball. It's bigger than football in terms of their schedule. But on any given night, you're going to see really exciting basketball being played by some fun players, whether it's young players that haven't proved themselves, it's older players, established veterans, true title contenders. Whatever demographic you're looking for, you'll find a story that appeals to you. And that's what makes a day like tonight a little bit more exciting, just to see that schedule play out and how these different games will kind of shape what we're talking about over the upcoming season.
And whenever you look at it, it is a bit premature, but we're midway through August, and your Heat kick off the preseason October 3rd over in Quebec City against Toronto. And so training camp will rev up September 21st, and before you know it, here we are. But until then, folks, we'll be back next Thursday to talk more about the NBA. That's David Ramil, host of Locked On Heat. I'm Ryland Stiles, Locked On Thunder. Until next time, folks, be good and be good to one another.